stuff today, and that is the situation in the Middle East. President Barack Obama addressed Americans, will address the world really today to talk about his decision that military action is necessary in Syria, but he is going to try to get the approval of Congress before taking any of that action. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's hear from President Barack Obama.
Our intelligence shows the Assad regime and its forces preparing to use chemical weapons, launching rockets in the highly populated suburbs of Damascus, and acknowledging that a chemical weapons attack took place. And all of this corroborates what the world can plainly see. Hospitals overflowing with victims, terrible images of the dead. All told, well over 1,000 people were murdered. Several hundred of them were children. Young girls and boys gassed to death by their own government. Now, this attack is an assault on human dignity. It also presents a serious danger to our national security. It risks making a mockery of the global prohibition on the use of chemical weapons. It endangers our friends and our partners along Syria's borders, including Israel, Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and Iraq. It could lead to escalating use of chemical weapons or their proliferation to terrorist groups who would do our people harm. In a world with many dangers, this menace must be confronted. Now, after careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets. This would not be an open-ended intervention. We would not put boots on the ground. Instead, our action would be designed to be limited in duration and scope. But I'm confident we can hold the Assad regime accountable for their use of chemical weapons, deter this kind of behavior, and degrade their capacity to carry it out. Our military has positioned assets in the region. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs has informed me that we are prepared to strike whenever we choose. Moreover, the chairman has indicated to me that our capacity to execute this mission is not time sensitive. It will be effective tomorrow, or next week, or 1 month from now. And I'm prepared to give that order. But, having made my decision as Commander-in-Chief based on what I am convinced is our national security interests, I'm also mindful that I'm the president of the world's oldest constitutional democracy. I've long believed that our power is rooted not just in our military might, but in our example as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's why I've made a second decision. I will seek authorization for the use of force from the American people's representatives in Congress. But if we really do want to turn away from taking appropriate action in the face of such an unspeakable outrage, then we must acknowledge the costs of doing nothing. Here's my question for every member of Congress and every member of the global community. What message will we send if a dictator can gas hundreds of children to death in plain sight and pay no price? What's the purpose of the international system that we've built if a prohibition on the use of chemical weapons that has been agreed to by the governments of 98% of the world's people and approved overwhelmingly by the Congress of the United States is not enforced? Make no mistake, this has implications beyond chemical warfare. If we won't enforce accountability in the face of this heinous act, what does it say about our resolve to stand up to others who flout fundamental international rules? To governments who would choose to build nuclear arms? To terrorists who would spread biological weapons? To armies who carry out genocide? We cannot raise our children in a world where we will not follow through on the things we say, the accords we sign, the values that define us.
All right, that was President Barack Obama speaking just a few hours ago, saying that the U.S. should take military action against Syria. I'll open up the phone lines on this in just a moment. Right now, joined by Max Abrahms, a terrorism expert and political science professor at Northeastern University. Mr. Abrahms, hi.
Hello.
What do you make of the president's comments today, and what does that mean in terms of the timing of an attack on Syria?
Well, I mean, he made two announcements, as he said. The first is that he's in favor of military strike, which everybody knew. And the second announcement was the more interesting part, and that is that now he's going to seek congressional approval. Congressional approval could take several weeks. My understanding is that Congress reconvened on the 9th, and then after that it could be, a battle. Both the House and Senate are very much divided. And so I think that Obama alluded to the delay in saying that, the United States is prepared militarily to go at any time, but we may be waiting for, as long as a month. And indeed, military action may not come at all.
What would be the purpose of that military action? We heard from the president, but I think there's still a lot of people saying, why would we take military action against Syria?
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, there are strong arguments both for the war as well as against it. The biggest reason for going to war, I think, is that Obama very clearly states U.S. credibility. He said, he drew this, this very prominent red line last year, where he said that if Assad uses chemical weapons in large amounts, or indeed if he even moves them in large amounts, that the U.S. wouldn't stand by. And based on intel, it seems that Assad forces did use chemical weapons in large doses on the 21st. And now the Obama administration is backed into a corner where they need to respond. It's also, there's a strategic calculation there, but there's also a very strong normative calculation, and that is that the use of chemical weapons on over 1,000 people, over 1,000 casualties, with hundreds of children just piled on top of each other is a moral disgrace. And so there's both a strategic and a moral component to intervention.
Well, I want to pick up on that, but I must take a break. My guest is Max Abrahms. He's a political science professor and expert on terrorism at Northeastern University. I do welcome your calls, comments, questions. Do you think Obama's made the case for military action? 604-280-9898, star 9898 on your cell phone. We'll be back as we broadcast live at the